Despite the constant online debate of whether or not art is important, something that should or shouldn't be made into a career, whether or not it should be taught in higher education, or even what is or isn't art, art is something that humans have been doing since quite literally forever. Art itself predates written language by tens of thousands of years. It is something that quite literally goes beyond words. Whether it is to describe animals in a particular part of the world, or some sort of carving that depicts a higher power, art is obviously quite important to us as humans. Otherwise, we wouldn't have stuck to doing it for over 30,000 years. Part of me wonders how an ancient artist would react to being placed in the middle of a Michael's and given free rein of all the supplies there. Hello there, I'm Ayasuna and I make videos, more specifically art videos. And for once I'm not talking about art-related drama. I am here today to talk about my own art journey and why I stuck with it despite the constant threats of AI, plagiarism, and the continued commercialization of social media. My whole point of my tangent earlier about the history of art is that all artists had some sort of journey to get them to where they were at that particular time. Whether it's a digital artist trying to make their way now, or a cave painter tens of thousands of years ago, each and every artist that ever lived had a journey when it came to their work. Like every journey, I'm sure they had their highs and lows, moments where they felt like giving up, or moments where they just simply wanted to draw because they had nothing to do. That is still part of a journey. Whether it's art that's done professionally or even just as a hobby, I think that each piece that we complete reveals a little bit more about ourselves that we didn't necessarily know before. And I think that is what makes art human, and why it is so important, and why we stuck with it for as long as we did. I recently turned 23, and that has me in a bit of a reflective mood lately. Though, according to the internet, anyone over 21 should already be headed to the retirement home. As I've mentioned a million times already, I've been drawing a lot, around 10 years at this point, though I've been posting it on social media for the past 5 or 6 years. But I never really stopped and considered why I was doing it. It was something that just came naturally to me. I mean, I didn't exactly have a creative background. I came from a working class family. We were paycheck to paycheck, and other than free art classes I would get sporadically as a kid, I didn't exactly have the predisposition to be as passionate for art that I am. That was until one day I was sitting in my grandma's living room, and she had her old CRT TV that had her movies and shows on demand. So on our old DVR setup, there was a section dedicated to arts and crafts. I think one of, if not the first video that I happened to see was by Mark Crilly, and he was drawing an eye. It wasn't a high production video, but something in my grade school brain exploded that day, and I wanted to learn how to draw an eye. From there, the rest is history. There of course were other talented artists in the arts and crafts section back then, but I really wanted to highlight Mark Crilly because his art videos really revolutionized and proved that art content could be popular online. Not just on YouTube, but across all other social media platforms. In a lot of ways, he's like the Bob Ross of modern art content, and in my opinion, that isn't mentioned nearly enough. Glazing aside, his work did light a flame in me in wanting to learn how to draw. I would draw all the time, both in and out of school. Whether it was crayons, broken chalk, a pen that I found on the ground, it didn't matter. As long as I had a sheet of paper, I was most likely doodling on it. Looking back at it now, I moved around a lot as a kid, and for a while art was my comfort. It was my home, even when wherever I lived didn't always feel like it. While I wasn't able to really save any of my childhood artwork, I did it because it was fun. I didn't really have any expectations of making it a career. It was just something that became second nature to me. That was until I became a teenager. While I'm not old enough to experience MySpace, I did experience the whole 2014 Tumblr era. At this point, art content was more popular on the internet, and Instagram was a place where artists could conceivably make a career, or at least get the connections to form one. This was around the time where I started to take art a bit more seriously than I was. I first started to post my art on DeviantArt as well as Amino. I know, yikes, I wasn't exactly proud of that either. But I quickly moved on to Instagram and Tumblr. I didn't really grow much on either platform, but it was still an important part of my art journey and one I will always look back on fondly. I would do art challenges all the time, and I would even host some of my own. That is something that I want to get into the habit of doing again, though I need a bit more patience on that front. By the way, I am still active on Instagram, even though growth there is pretty much non-existent for me at this point. I still have my Tumblr account as well, although I'm still debating on whether I should try to revive it or whether or not I should just create a new one at this point. Like I mentioned before, all my socials are linked in my card, which will be in the description of this video. If you want to see what I'm cooking on other platforms, then don't hesitate to take a look. But yeah, back to the topic at hand and me talking about my art journey. I would say in my teenage years I got heavily inspired by anime and manga, which in hindsight wasn't too surprising as it was starting to become mainstream at that point. I still remember a time where you would get bullied even if you mentioned that you liked Naruto or Dragon Ball or even just Pokemon. I knew art was something that I potentially wanted to pursue as a career, but I was kind of directionless at the time. It was like I knew where I wanted to go, but I didn't exactly know how to get there. As a teenager, finances were a bit rough, so again, I couldn't exactly afford art classes or any specific mentors regarding art. So I tried to learn everything I can off of YouTube University as well as Pinterest. While there was more art content online, content regarding how to start an art career was still something that wasn't super common back then. It's hard not to look back and think that I could have been further along had I taken things a bit more seriously back then. But regardless, the past is the past, and there's no point in dwelling in my past mistakes. Like I said, I wasn't really growing in a super fast pace, but I was consistent back then. That all changed by the time COVID showed up. At this point, I had already graduated high school, and I had already started working a quote-unquote real job. I don't think I really need to go into a tangent about how rough 2020 was. I certainly went through a lot that year. In fact, I went through a situation that caused me to lose a lot of my older artwork. So apart from what I posted online, I likely don't have a lot of that artwork anymore. This was the first real slump in my art journey. My mental was probably at the lowest point it's ever been. I didn't really know what to do with my life. In fact, I still don't. But if you saw the art that I posted back then, you'd know that I wasn't exactly in the best of mindsets. I was posting stuff that was either unfinished or in a state that I wasn't completely happy with. I would go weeks, if not months, without really posting any art updates, and I was kind of in a rut. There was a period where I seriously considered to just stop drawing altogether. It was a really rough time for me, but I think it was also necessary to get to the point where I'm at now. This all changed when I joined a particular community on the internet in early 2022. I wasn't exactly used to people having similar interests as me, so it all kind of overwhelmed me at first. It was through that community where I met one of my closest friends. His online handle here is Zealotpara, and I'll have his website linked in the description as well. I remember one of our first interactions was us talking about Berserk for about an hour, and also us talking about random dinosaur facts for 3 hours. If you want a guide to talk about storytelling as well as random dinosaur facts, then he's your man. While he mainly focuses on writing these days, he also dabbles into art just like me, and who knows, maybe we'll work together on something in the future? But regardless, he's an amazing friend, and if it weren't for him and others, I likely would have quit art altogether. So please go show him some support, I would greatly appreciate that. But like I said, this group contained a bunch of talented people, artists, VTubers, writers, other content creators. Seeing them do what they wanted to do without having to worry about external pressures was really something that I needed to see and would bolster me in creating my own YouTube channel as well as other social media platforms. I remember a year ago I was scared to go on voice call in Discord, and now I'm narrating my own videos. I think I came a long way in just a year. So that brings me to the present day. I'm not gonna lie and say everything has been sugar and rainbows, but I think I feel a lot more at peace at where my art is and where I want to go. And I think that's always where I kind of wanted to be in terms of my artwork. While my art clearly isn't enough to pay the bills, I did technically get a sponsor earlier this year. This was due to the generous people at Ferris Wheel Press for sending me their inks to try out. And while I'm no longer sponsored by them, they certainly helped boost my art account and made me realize that this is something that I could realistically pursue for the foreseeable future. As you also might not have known, I also have an affiliate link with Amazon. While my storefront mainly focuses on traditional art, and I will do a tier list of my art supplies soon, I do get a small commission for each purchase you make using my storefront, which is linked in my card. Every little bit of support would help in me growing my channel. That said, money is tight right now, and if you can't afford anything from my storefront, you can also just leave a like and subscribe to my channel. That would also greatly help me as I continue to grow. I have some very, very exciting news coming in the future, so if you want to see more, then please stay tuned. So like I alluded to, me starting this channel was the next step in my art journey. I'm not really sure where it will lead, but I'm kind of mad at myself for not starting sooner. At least personally, it wasn't enough for me to have an interest in art to stick with it. I mean, obviously having the drive to do it is quite important to succeed, but for a while I was sort of doing everything on my own, and I kind of lacked the whole community aspect to making art or being part of a creative community. Art was a way for me to express myself when words weren't quite doing the trick. I think I learned more about myself when I started to share my art more publicly. But for a while I lacked the purpose about why I was doing it. And I think for a while that sort of had me feeling lost. While of course it is important to do art for yourself and that you shouldn't necessarily follow trends to get successful, as it may or may not always work, I also think that art is something to be shared. And it doesn't necessarily have to be shared on social media to make a point. It could be your dog or cat or your neighbor or your mother, really anyone. It could even be just to yourself. Whether it's original work or a study like I'm doing here, or even just simply fan art, each painting or drawing that you make reveals something about yourself that you may not have known before. Art is something that is so deeply personal from person to person. While I'm thankful for social media for allowing artists to have a platform to share their work, I think a lot of us get caught up on the why we are even doing art to begin with. We get so caught up with the algorithm and engagement that we lose sight of what's important, and that is our art. And it's not like I don't get that art is a highly competitive field. If you have any shot of being successful, you do sort of have to stand out among the rest. But I think we often forget that art is a marathon and not a sprint. A lot of the greatest artists of all time didn't become that great overnight. I mean, hell, even their work didn't exactly become popular overnight. Many artists didn't become popular till after their death. To quote a great character from one of my most favorite shows, we focus so much on the destination that we often forget how we get there. You might look at a bigger artist and get jealous about how much success that they may have had, but we truly don't know what their struggles are in their life, or what is going through their head every time they post. All artists have their highs and lows. It doesn't matter if you have 1 follower, or 10,000, or even 1 million. And the reason that I know that is because all artists are also human. We get hurt, we get upset, we get happy, angry, you name it. That's just part of being human. These social media platforms play on our strongest emotions and tear us apart when they should be bringing us together. Do you think the cave painters were actually bullying each other based on how they decided to color a horse? It still really doesn't make any sense to me that any artist is bullied for their art style. Apart from obvious tracing, that is a different subject. I think a lot of younger artists are scared to take a chance in their art journey because they're feared about how they're going to be perceived online. Like, I still remember a time before short form media was a thing. Artists were drawing whatever without fear of being ridiculed online because they colored something a certain way. Like, I get asking for constructive criticism and giving such, but damn, some of y'all are just mean. And it's not even I'm out of a place of concern, it just seems like downright jealousy. I think it's that fear that was holding me back when I was younger from pursuing different avenues regarding my artwork. It only took for me to get to the point now where I realized none of that actually matters. I mean, look at me, I'm still amateur when it comes to digital art. I only really picked up digital art within the past year or two. I mean, my art might be a bit messy, I might not know all the settings when it comes to digital artwork and coloring, but I'm still trying new things and I'm actually having a lot of fun. Even if it's professional art, art should still be fun. I guess the whole point of this video is to tell my younger self that it is okay to try different things. Like, if there's an original character you want to make, then make it. If there's a comic you want to do, then draw it. If there's any sort of project, then don't let fear hold you back. If you're having fun and learning something along the way, then there's no wrong way to do art. Just ignore all the naysayers and you do you. That's it. And that is my TED Talk. Like I said, creativity is a really deep and personal journey that each of us have to go on in our lives. So I ask you, to anyone's listening, what made you start to draw, or really do any creative hobby? Let me know down in the comments, and if you like this video, then don't hesitate to drop a like and subscribe, because there's more from where that came from. But until then, take care. Bye.